Hi, welcome to the info session. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, but go ahead and in the chat box, introduce yourself, let us know where you're coming from and how you got interested in solar, and make sure that you're also connected to the audio, that way that you can hear us. Well, it looks like we're hitting capacity, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Solar United Neighbors Center County Solar and EV Charger Solar 101 info session. I'm Monica Carey. I am the Pennsylvania Program Associate with Solar United Neighbors. I am based out of Lancaster County, and I am assisted today by Henry. Henry, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Henry McKay. I'm in Pittsburgh, but it's nice to see you all here tonight.
And then we also are lucky enough to have Kenny Tompkins here with us. And so Kenny, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kenny Tompkins. I am the selected installer for this group, Sustainable Energy Systems. Our main offices are in Frederick, Maryland, and that is where I am tonight. But we work in Pennsylvania as well and have offices in Harrisburg. And I'm happy to be a part of this group and happy to answer any questions that anybody has tonight.
Great, thank you. Well, Kenny is also going to be talking a little bit more at the end of the presentation, specifically about the work that he's doing with the co-op. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping. You want to make sure that you have joined the audio, that way you can hear us and participate. And at any point during the talk, go ahead and submit your questions in the chat. And you can send those to just the panelists or to everybody. And I am going to stop at a couple of points along the way just to make sure that I answer all of the questions that you have, but feel free to drop in the questions at any point. And then the last bit is that this webinar is going to be recorded, and we will share a link of the recording with everyone who RSVPs, so including the people who aren't here right now. And if you do have to leave in the middle of it, you will be able to see the end of the presentation. So I wanted, whoops, oh man. Too much power. I wanted to take a second and thank our partners. Partners are really critical to the success of the co-op. And we're running the co-op in close cooperation with these organizations. So we partnered with the Center Region Council of Governments and Center Sustains, as well as a group of local governments, boroughs and townships. We were really lucky to be able to have them come on board, as well as the Sierra Club Moshannon group. And it may be one of these partners that actually brought you here to us today. So we're going to launch a poll that I would love if you could respond to, just to learn a little bit more about what brought you here. And if you are willing to share this webinar once you get it with a friend or neighbor, really help us grow the co-op before it closes on January 31st. So you should see that poll on your screen now.
We're at 12, 19%. 12 of the 19 folks have taken it. Now we're 13. Give it another.
When we send it to you, that's really helpful to go up, making sure that it's really successful in Center County. Okay. Great. So I'm going to close up that. Okay. So Henry and I work for Solar United Neighbors. We are the ones who are running and managing the co-op. SUN is a national nonprofit 501c3 organization. We are membership based. We're not a solar installer and we're completely vendor neutral, but we are an organization that acts as a consumer advocacy, solar education, and community outreach organization. We organize around solar policy issues, and we have field staff in 11 states and Washington, D.C. And since 2007, when we were formed, we have had a national impact, helping over 6,300 families go solar. And that's been a total of 53 megawatts of solar, which has had the effect of offsetting 815,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Our model is that we help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. And the way that we really do that is when we help people go solar, it's as part of a co-op or it's by themselves. And this can include homeowners, businesses, nonprofits, houses of worship, and that list is constantly growing. We bring people together through events like this info session, at solar tours, happy hours, lobby days, and at those events, we provide resources to help solar enthusiasts effectively advocate for their rights. This involves things like protecting net metering. And if you don't know what net metering is, that's not a problem. I'm going to go over it later in the presentation. But it's also things that are like keeping your HOA from restricting your access to solar. And there are so many other policy initiatives that we're working on, fights that we're having across the country, and many of them right here in Pennsylvania. So at this point, I would like to show a video from Joanne Tosti-Vasey. She is in Bellefonte Borough, one of our partner organizations, and she was an early adopter of solar storage and electric vehicles in Center County. So she's going to tell you about her home.
Hi, I'm Joanne Tosti-Vasey. Our home and vehicle are charged by the sun. We recommend that for our earth and for your own long-term pocketbook savings that you should consider putting solar energy and backup batteries on your home, and consider driving either a plug-in hybrid vehicle or a full battery-powered electric vehicle. We've done all of these things. However, there was no co-op available when we did these projects, such as Solar United Neighbors. Therefore, our costs were somewhat higher due to both being early adopters and doing these installations on our own. What I'd like to do is show you a little bit about what we've done over the last several years. Well, we started off with an electric vehicle in 2013, which included the purchase of an electric vehicle wall charger that we put here in our garage. We had been spending about $150 per month on gas with our internal combustion engine. After purchasing our car and the wall charger, our cost for the electric gas dropped to $50 per month. Now that we have solar energy on our home, the monthly charge for all electricity used in our garage for the lights, the garage door opener, and the wall charger has ranged from about $11 per month. Adding the battery backup system brought it down to just $7.85 a month. That's the grid hookup fee for the separate electric contract we have with West Penn Power for our garage electricity. So 2 years later, we put solar energy on our home. The installer we hired reviewed our home and our electric bills. He made a recommendation to install 32 panels, which you can see in this video. They cover an estimated 101% of our electric usage. The upfront cost was high, but with the federal tax credit, we were able to afford the installation. The cost was about $38,000, but that was reduced with a 30% federal tax credit we got at the time. That credit equaled approximately $11,400 that we were able to use over the next couple of years to reduce our federal taxes. And the value of our home was increased by $20,000 by the underwriter for our homeowner's insurance policy as a result of this installation. And we are in a historic district, and as a result of this installation, Bellefonte created a solar ordinance that now allows for solar installation throughout town, including within the historic district. And finally, in June of this year, we installed the battery backup system for our solar array. It's located here in our pantry. We have received 2 bills on the house since this installation. Because of the size of our array and the use of this battery backup system, we have actually been selling back energy to the grid through net metering rather than paying to run all of our electrical stuff here at home. In the long run, we are helping reduce greenhouse gas emissions and significantly reducing our monthly cost to have a roof over our head and to move around in the community. So can you.
Okay, so Joanne went solar on her own because there was no Solar United Neighbors solar co-op at the time. Going solar is an investment and it can be really intimidating as a process. So the solar co-op is perfect for demystifying that process. To give the bottom line up front, I wanted to give a quick overview of the solar co-op and how it works. So it is a group process. We bring together a group of 50 to 100 or more neighbors in a process that takes typically around 6 to 8 months. And the group chooses one installer. And you get, the installers bid competitively to service the group. And you get an individual contract for the system that's custom designed for your home. And you get it at the co-op pricing. At the same time, during the process, you get technical advice from Solar United Neighbors, and we also act as a consumer advocate for you. And since the Pennsylvania program started in 2018, we have really optimized the co-op model. And we've helped over 100 people go solar with us, which has yielded over a megawatt of installed solar capacity. That's been nearly $3 million invested in the local economy, which is also $4 million of energy savings over 25 years, the lifetime of those solar systems. That's been 19 jobs created in the solar industry and over 12,500 metric tons of lifetime carbon dioxide emissions offsets. So now that you see some of the benefits of joining, we want to dig into the presentation. It's going to be in 3 parts, and I'll have a question and answer period after each section. But again, feel free to submit those questions in the chat in the meantime. So in the first section, we'll talk about solar technology. And when I say solar, I'm really using it as a shorthand for solar photovoltaics or solar PV. This is the majority of the market. PV tech is what converts light from the sun into electricity. So you have these solar panels that at the heart of them, those little blue squares, are the solar cell, and silicon is still the dominant technology. They're cells that are thinly sliced wafers from a silicon crystal, and they're grouped together into a panel. And then you string together a group of panels or modules into a solar array. Now, the rest of the panel is really there to protect the solar cells. So you have a polymer encapsulant, tempered glass, a frame, and that's really there to make sure that the solar cells are protected from the weather and elements, and make sure that they're durable and long lasting for the lifetime of the panels, which should be 25 years. Now, when people talk about their solar systems, sometimes they'll say, I have 12 panels on my roof or something like that. And that is not the easiest way to understand a solar system. And that's because panels have different wattages, just the way that light bulbs do. So what we'll talk about for solar systems is size. And so in this case, we have these 12 panels that are each 350 watts. And so together, this array is 4.2 kilowatts. That's the size. And a kilowatt is 1,000 watts. It's a unit of power. The average size system in Pennsylvania for a residential system is somewhere between 4 and 15 kilowatts. It can be as large as 50 kilowatts in Pennsylvania, which is really huge. And you would size it based on your site, how much land or roof space you have, but also your budget and your goals. How much of your energy consumption are you trying to offset? And so power is this instantaneous measurement. And then power sustained over time, a kilowatt hour, that is energy. And you'll see that as electricity production. Often you'll see this on your energy bill. So solar panels generate direct current, or DC, but homes use alternating current, AC. So an inverter is needed to switch from the DC to make the solar energy usable in your home. The inverters are also the computerized brain of your solar system. They will connect to the internet and share your power generation in real time with an app that you can connect to with your phone or a computer, so that you can monitor your system power production remotely. There are several different types and models within types of inverters. There is a string inverter. So this is pretty traditional. It's one kind of large box that's located usually somewhere in your home, typically near your electrical service panel. And it does what it says. It strings panels together. And it does that inversion right there in that box in one place. It's really good for simple systems because your inverter is also calculating the maximum voltage and current to optimize the power of the panels. So if you have one panel that gets a drastically different amount of shade or sun from the rest of the panels, then you're going to have too much variation, and the string inverter will actually revert to the lowest common denominator. So you might end up losing a little bit of power. So string inverter is really good if you have consistent or even amounts of sun or shade over your roof at any given point. But as sunlight conditions change on the individual panel level, you'll have a different level of voltage and current to give you the maximum power at any given time. So you have to do power optimization at the panel level. That's probably the best way to go about it. So another option would be this microinverter. So in this case, you have a microinverter that's clipped to the back of each panel. It's slightly larger than a cell phone, and it does the inversion and that power calculation in place at the panel level. It's smaller, it's becoming more common, but it is a more complicated process, and it can have a higher cost while also maybe having higher efficiency. So this is really good for roofs that have more variation in shade over the course of the day. And then there is the hybrid solution, which is the string inverter with the DC optimizer. So the optimizer is what clips onto the back of the panel, and it does that calculation at the panel level, but all of the inversion is done in one place at the string inverter. So it is helpful to know the difference between these styles, but you don't really have to have a preference until you have a conversation with your solar installer and when you have a better idea of your roof conditions over the course of the day. Some installers will do all of them. They'll only offer one of the options. or they'll offer a couple. So if there's time at the end, Kenny can talk about what SES offers in terms of inverters. So once your inverter converts to AC, it all feeds into the general electricity mix in your electrical panel. And the installer is going to set this up for you. In older homes with a full electrical box, you may need to get an upgrade. You might need to add a sub panel, or you're looking at a full replacement. But most newer homes and most homes generally don't really need that kind of upgrade before going solar. But this is something that when your installer comes out and takes a look at your home, they will need access inside your home just to be able to see the service panel and know what they're working with. As a co-op member, one of the benefits is that you receive information on the costs associated with the installation, including panel upgrades. That way, you know ahead of time what to expect and there are no surprise costs. So if you're going to have a roof-mounted system, it's really critical to know how it's going to be attached to your roof, and that's going to depend on what type of roof you have. So here there's a pitched asphalt shingle roof, fairly common. And in this case, a hole will be drilled through the roof to the rafters to make sure it's a really secure connection. And then the penetration point is going to be protected with some kind of sealant to make sure that it's waterproof. And then there will be metal flashing over top to make sure that the water sheds away from the penetration point, and that really minimizes the chance of leaks. Then if you have a standing seam metal roof, what you'll do is just clip the solar panels to the seams. And this is great because you get to avoid penetration altogether. This will also be true on a flat roof where you'll have a ballasted system that's weighted down. Again, because you want to minimize the chance of leaks from your roof. And metal roofs are great because they last 50 years. So needing to replace them ahead of getting solar is less likely. But when you join the co-op, you will tell us about your roof type, any potential roof issues, and we will do a satellite remote roof review just to let you know the quality or how, if your roof is going to be suitable for solar ahead of time. And there are a number of criteria that go into if your roof is suitable for solar. The first is, ideally, you want your roof to be facing due south. That is going to give you the best efficiency. But you can make do with anything between west and east. You really just don't want to be facing north. Next is that you want little or no shading. Small amounts of shade are fine, and your installer will do a shade analysis to make sure that your roof is going to be suitable for solar. Next is you do want to have enough space for the panels. They are large. They're 5.5 feet by 3.5 feet. So really want at least 250 square feet, and you want that to be contiguous. You don't want it to be broken up by dormers and chimneys, because every time it gets broken up, that's a loss of efficiency. And 250 is kind of the minimum that you would want it to be. Installers typically won't install on less than that just because the system size is smaller. And then finally, you do want a new-ish undamaged roof. Your roof should last as long as it takes for the system to pay itself off. And in Pennsylvania, that's typically between 8 and 12 years. Ideally, your roof is going to last the lifetime of your solar installation. For an asphalt shingle roof, you want a roof that's going to be less than half of its lifetime. So typically under 10, 15 years old. If it's older than that, you probably do want to get it replaced. And that's just because it can be really cost prohibitive to have to remove your solar panels to have the roof replaced only to put the panels back up. And then finally, you do want it to be in good condition, or else you'll need to have it repaired or replaced before going solar. But if your roof isn't suitable for solar, or you just don't want it on your roof and you have the space for it, a ground mount is always an option. And there are some trade-offs between a roof and a ground mount. A ground mount is almost always more expensive. And that's because you need to pour concrete to stabilize the setup. And then there's trenching that needs to be dug to bury the electrical lines to carry the power from the panels to your home. However, you can face and orient and position the panels to perfectly face south so that you can maximize efficiency. Because they're not on your roof, they're easier to clean. And they have all of that air circulating around them that there's not the opportunity for that when they're mounted on your roof. So we know that panels that run colder actually run more efficiently than if they're too hot. So you do actually end up getting more efficient solar production from a ground mount. So if you join the co-op, we will review where you want to install the solar. So you'll tell us if you want it to be a roof or a ground mount. And you can drop a pin on the map for where on your property you'd like to have the installation. We make sure it's going to be a good fit from the outset. So now, to put it all together, you have your panels absorbing sunlight, and it's creating or generating that direct current. Then it goes into the inverter where it switches to AC, alternating current. And then that feeds into your electrical service panel, and you can use that energy in your home or business. And in this example, we're assuming that your home is still grid tied. It is still the most common and most cost-effective way of going solar. And that's important because you will also get a two-directional or a two-way utility meter that measures energy coming from the grid to your home, as well as going from your home onto the grid. And so you probably want a system that's close to or at your annual energy usage. In the summer, you're going to be overproducing, and all of that excess generation is going to be exported to the meter, to the grid. And your utility will give you credit on what you export. And that's what's called net metering. It's a method of accounting. And in Pennsylvania, the net metering is really phenomenal. It's some of the best in the country. But basically, for every 1 kilowatt hour you export to the grid, your utility will pay you for 1 kilowatt hour at the full retail rate. They'll take that energy that you exported and most likely they'll sell it to your neighbors at full retail rate. So then in the winter, when you're not generating as much, you'll have banked hours from the summer when you're overproducing, and you'll get to spend down those hours. That way, because you're connected to the grid, you're not going to be without power in the winter or at night. You'll still get the extra power that you need from the utility. And the billing cycle runs from June 1st to May 31st. So then you'll be able to bank those hours at the top of your billing cycle and then spend them down by the end. So the way that you might see net metering is actually in your electric bill. So this is a bill from a Penelec customer who went solar. And this is for February to March, so not the sunniest of months. And so at the beginning of this billing period, they had a bank, you can see it right here, of 1,135 kilowatt hours. So during this month, they received from the grid 725 kilowatt hours, and they exported 718 kilowatt hours. So they generated all but 7, which is what they took from their bank. So by the end of the month, they had produced all of their energy except for 7 kilowatt hours that came out of their bank. So they were left with 1,128 kilowatt hours. And so their bill, which would have been $98, actually got reduced to basically just this customer charge of $10. So their whole bill was virtually zeroed out. And that's what we mean when we say that solar pays for itself by reducing your electric bill. So through the co-op, you can go solar, you can get battery backup, or an EV charger, and you can get any one or combination of those things. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about batteries and backup. So power outages are increasingly common in the United States with weather events and aging infrastructure. And if we actually just take out weather events completely out of the equation, the average American lost 2 hours of electricity per year from 2013 to 2020. And that's that dark blue part of the graph. It's relatively consistent over those years. But when we do factor in major weather events, it grew to an average of eight hours per year by 2020, which was the most in history. So people want to be able to have power in their home when there's an outage, especially as this is becoming more and more common. And one misconception can be that people who are in a grid-tied system think, if the sun is shining, I have solar panels and the power is out, I'll still have power, I'll be fine. The problem with this is that you do have that two-way meter. It's constantly listening to the grid as well as to your own home. So if it knows that the grid has gone out, it will shut off your solar entirely. And this is a safety mechanism. This just makes sure that your house isn't backfeeding energy onto the power lines when line workers are out. So if you wanted to keep your home powered during an outage, you would need batteries, and you would need to keep them charged until there's an outage, when they'll automatically kick in and power parts of your home. So batteries are still pretty expensive. You probably wouldn't want to buy enough to cover your entire home, but if you have frequent utility outages, batteries might be an excellent option for you. As well, if you want to power critical loads. So this could be anything like medical equipment, well pumps, as well as a modem, lights, a fridge and freezer. And then also, if you're just looking to be prepared in the event of an emergency or disaster. And I know that this is something that everybody's thinking a lot more about, but there is currently no mechanism to make batteries really economical. It is something that is coming online, and it's good for backup power, but not necessarily for saving money. But the important thing to know is that if you're interested in batteries, you really want to let your installer know. Even if you're not ready to install batteries right now, they can design a system to be compatible with a future battery installation. So it's important for them to know. And we do have a guide to storage. It is at our website, solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. There's also a 1 hour long webinar on storage. Answer all of your questions. And again, I wanted to talk a little bit about electric vehicle chargers. So you can install an EV charger with the co-op. And we say solar is local fuel because with an EV charger, you can see right where your fuel is coming from. And the cost is stable and predictable, unlike the cost of gas right now and over the past year. So when you buy an EV, you will get a level 1 charger. It's just for a regular 120 volt outlet. It's relatively slow charging speed. It's usually about 5 to 6 miles of charge per hour. But with the co-op, you can upgrade to a level 2 EV charger. So this is a 240 volt outlet. So that will need to be upgraded, but the charging speed is much faster. It's 10 to 30 miles of charge per hour. And it typically has a warranty around 3 years. And then the cost of the EV charger, there are a few components to it. There's the unit itself, the installation. And that's variable because you may need to go through drywall, depending on if you have it installed in your garage or outside your home. And then also the length of distance between the charger and where your car is going to sit is a real driver of cost. So the total cost can be anywhere between that $1,000 and upwards of $2,700. There are incentives for EV chargers, and I am going to go over that a little bit later. So now I'll just go over a couple of our frequently asked questions, and then after this, I will stop and take whatever questions you have from me that I haven't already answered. So the first question we get often is about warranties. And there are 3 types of warranties that you should expect. The first is an installer's warranty. That's a labor workmanship warranty. And that is for any issues that come from the installation itself. So damage to the home or issues with the electrical work, leaks, and that warranty really depends on the installer, and it can go anywhere between 1 year and the lifetime panels. There is also what's known as a manufacturer's warranty. So this is on the equipment, like the panels and the inverters. Typically, it's between 10 and 15 years, and that is if the equipment fails, you can get it replaced. And then finally, there's what's known as a production warranty. So this comes from the manufacturer, and this applies to the solar panels. It is a measure of how the panels degrade in efficiency over time. So it'll be worded like by year 20, the panels will have at least 80% of their original efficiency. You might also see it as each year, the panels will lose no more than 1 or 0.5% of the original efficiency. So it's a really good way to compare one panel to another. But the benefit to joining the co-op is that you get a package of plain language, and we help you kind of parse the meaning of the warranties. A question we'll get is about homeowners insurance, and will it raise or lower your premiums? And the answer is it could do either. It's more likely to raise your premium because you're adding to the rebuilt cost of your home, which goes into the calculation of that premium. But there are some insurers who may lower it if they have an environmental or sustainability initiative that they're working towards. So we just recommend that before you go solar, you check with them so that there are no surprises. As for maintenance, it is one of the key selling points to solar. It's really low maintenance. There are no moving parts. If it's on a pitched roof, you can expect the snow and rain to just slide right off for the most part. You really don't expect a lot of maintenance issues over the lifetime of the panels. We do recommend that you have a professional come out and look at them every 5 or so years, and your installer should be able to give you a recommendation for somebody who can do that service for you. You'll also be monitoring your solar production on the app that I was talking about earlier, so you'll probably notice any performance issues as they crop up. So the solar systems are spec'd to last 25 years. And the payback period in Pennsylvania is 8 to 12 years. So it is a long-term investment. So if you're thinking about moving soon, it may not be the right time for you. However, we know that solar adds to the resale value of home. It's a cool asset that people like, and it lowers the cost of living in your house. So because of that, you may be able to recoup some of your investment. And there actually have been 2 national studies, one from the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab out of California, as well as Zillow, have done studies that have shown that the resale value of homes rises with solar. Will my HOA allow solar on my home? So in Pennsylvania, there is no statewide requirement for HOAs to allow rooftop solar. That's what's known as a solar access law. Typically with HOAs, if it's not explicitly permitted in your governing documents, you can assume that it's not allowed. So we highly recommend that you read your governing documents. And this issue is something that we're working on very closely at Sun. So if it's something that you're passionate about, please let us know. We would love to talk to you about it. And then if you're in an historic district, this is going to be fairly similar to the HOA. You will have specific rules and may or may not allow you to install solar. They may tell you that there are restrictions on where you can place the solar panels, or say that you can't at all. It's really case by case, but talk to your installer. They'll be able to help you kind of navigate that process, and we can also help you. So reach out with whatever questions you have. Okay, so I think I will stop there for questions. Are there any that I didn't address in the chat, Henry?
No questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing any hands raised yet.
Okay. Well, I'll stay here for another few seconds. If you do have questions, go ahead and either raise your hand or put them in the chat. Okay, then I'm going to move on. But if you think of something, go ahead and drop a question in, and I will.
We got one.
Okay.
From Paul Wagner. If you join the co-op, are you obligated to purchase a system?
No. And that is something that I'm going to talk about in the last section. But short answer, no.
And that's it so far.
Okay. Okay, great. So we'll move on and we'll talk about the financials of solar. This is something that people tend to have a lot of questions about. So solar costs have dropped drastically from the time that they were introduced in the 70s. And even just in the past decade, costs have dropped by 73%. And we do know that within the last couple of years, inflation pressures and supply chain issues have affected the price of solar. But at this point, it's all been pretty modest marginal decreases in solar in that cost per watt, which is the best way to compare solar panel to solar panel. So solar is not seen anymore as a specialty or boutique project. It's not just for the fancy homes in the neighborhood. It can really be accessed by a lot of people. It has a great return on investment. And at the same time, we know that in the past decade, electricity costs have risen 40% since 2010. And so we're seeing people choose to go solar in the context of ever increasing electric bills. So the solar co-op, we can't guarantee that you are going to save money because we don't select the installer, the co-op members do, which is something else that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But we have been doing this long enough that we've seen pretty reliable discount of about 15%, that co-op members save 15% relative to people who go solar without the co-op. And that's just the power of bulk purchase. And the reason that that's true is because of how the costs of solar break down. So here we're comparing costs of solar over the last decade. And you can see that there are really three components to the cost of solar. So from the bottom in yellow are the system components. So these are the panels, the inverters, racking, and that's really dropped drastically. Labor costs have also decreased. That's that green stripe in the center. But over the past 5-ish years, they've remained relatively constant. And finally, the top is soft costs. So it's a little bit harder to see on this chart, but within the last 5 years or so, soft costs have actually been the component to increase. And soft costs are things like permitting fees, inspection fees, marketing, and customer acquisition costs. So the customer acquisition step gets skipped because when a co-op forms, we can bring a large group of well-informed potential customers to the installer. So all of the money that they would spend on marketing and customer acquisition, they can save and pass those savings on to the members. So here I have an example of pricing for a solar system. There are two sized systems here, the 5 kilowatt and 9 kilowatt. 9 kilowatt is the average Pennsylvania co-op installation size. So I'm going to focus on that far right column, but it is important to note that the costs and savings scale with the size of the installation. So your payback will depend on your utility, but for a 9 kilowatt system with the average PA solar co-op pricing, your system is going to cost about $23,000. And if you can apply the federal tax credit, which right now is 26%, and I'll explain a little bit more on the next slide, your net cost is going to be just over $17,000. Now, your first year, you'll save an estimated $1,100 in your electric bill. And then that is a cumulative number as the lifetime of your panels goes on. By year 25, you'll have saved the cost of your panels twice. So your net profit is actually expected to be even higher than the net cost. And of course, this is example pricing, but we can see that for both of the systems. There is another stream of income for solar owners, and that is the solar renewable energy credit, or an SREC. And so here we have pricing for the first 5 years. So an SREC basically comes out of a Pennsylvania policy where utilities are required to have a certain amount of the electricity that they sell come from solar. In this case, it's 0.5%. That is the Pennsylvania law. And so they pay solar generators for their electricity. And for every megawatt hour that you produce, they will pay somewhere in the range of $30. That's that $30 per SREC charge. So for those 5 years with a 9 kilowatt system, you're looking at around $1,700. So it's not massive, but it is a nice extra source of revenue from your solar system. Now, the federal tax credit is decreasing. This year, it is 26%. So this is an income tax credit. It is not a tax deduction. It's not refundable. And basically, if you go solar this year, the next year when you file your taxes, your tax bill will be reduced by 26% of the total cost of going solar, which can include batteries. Excuse me, if you don't have the tax liability, it's not refundable, but you can roll it over multiple years. And so it's going to be 26% for this year, 22% next year, and then it hits a cliff and goes to 0%. This is something that may be fixed by Congress in the Build Back Better Act, but it's not guaranteed. And all we can say right now is that as of right now, the 26% is the best that the income tax credit is going to be in the foreseeable future. So this is really the time to go solar if you're going to. But if you have questions about applying the tax credit, we highly recommend that you seek out advice from a tax professional. And then there are financing options. So obviously there is a cash option. So it's high upfront, but you'll do nothing but save over time. So you can maximize your total lifetime savings. But if you want to go the loan route, you really want to look at the terms, the interest rates and fees, and you can go through an installer, you can go through a bank or a credit union. So it's pretty common for people to go with a home equity line of credit. That's the most cost effective generally, but there are other types of loans. And then there's also financing offered through the installer. And if you're a Sun Co-op member, you actually have access to loans from the Clean Energy Credit Union or the Community First Credit Union. And they have low fees. And again, you have access to it as a co-op member, that not everybody does. But if you do go the loan route, you do just want to make sure that you're shopping around and comparing terms and figuring out what's the best option for you. Then for EV chargers, there are actually more incentives for them on top of going solar. So EVs are, the vehicles themselves are more affordable and popular than ever. And we know that roughly half of homeowners who have solar or an EV actually have both. So it's really common to pair the two. And there are federal, state, and local incentives to buy EVs. And then there's also an incentive to save up to $1,000 on a level 2 EV charger, which again, you can get through the co-op. So if you want to learn more about EVs and EV chargers and their incentives, you can go to the co-op webpage, solarunitedneighbors.org/Center County. And under the updates tab, you can read more about these incentives. So I will stop here and take any questions that you might have about the economics of solar.
We do have a few questions.
Okay.
I have one from Raymond, and this might be one, Kenny, that you could help with. Raymond says, if I already have panels 10 years old, a 4-kilowatt system, does it make sense to replace them or just add? I have the room on my roof.
Yeah, Kenny, do you want to take that one?
You're muted, Kenny.
My apologies, guys. Raymond, I would want to get some more information from you before I give you an exact answer on that. And specifically, you know, assuming that your panels are 10 years old, I'm imagining they're less than 200 watts per panel. So there's certainly an argument to be made, you know, that there's better technology that could use the productive space on your roof and make more of that. But not knowing exactly what your needs and goals are, I wouldn't necessarily be able to advise you. So unfortunately, I'd have to answer your question with a couple additional questions and really guide you from there. But my hope for you would be that if it's only 10 years old, that you've got another 10 to 15 years of valuable life in those panels, and that we should look at extending the value of those panels.
Thanks, Kenny. And then we had a question from Paul Wagner. Is there a cash discount?
So,
and
yeah.
Maybe we could answer this generally, and then Kenny, I don't know if you might want to have anything to add to that. Monica, you want to take a stab at it in general terms first, or I can do it if you like.
Yeah, do you mind, Henry?
Sure. So often installers have financing partners, and you can borrow money through that financing partner. And then there are fees that are passed on to you for using that loan. And sometimes the ways those fees are communicated, sometimes they don't show up as like an itemized fee, but if you pay cash, you get a discount. So it's kind of like the cash discount is the absence of the fee. But you know, it's worth noting that you really have a lot of choice in the financing you're using, and you can shop around and try to find something that works out for you. You don't have to use you know, whatever might be paired with the installer's offering. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Kenny.
No, you got it exactly right. So our offer is out of the gate is going to be a cash offer, and that will be the lowest price that you could pay for your project. Depending on what type of financing you pursue, there could certainly be some additional fees that are added to the principal before interest is applied. I wouldn't personally frame that as a cash discount, but it's certainly the least expensive way to pay for your project.
Then we have a question from Don. Break down soft costs. What is included in that?
Yeah, so soft costs are going to be your permit fees, your marketing, customer acquisition. Those were some of the examples that I gave. Kenny, you would know even more specifically. Did you have any that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so everywhere we spend money on your project that's not related to the equipment that's generating energy for you, that's what I consider the soft cost. So even the the labor that's involved in that, permitting cost, interconnection application, us paying our staff and accounting for that, travel, any of those things that come into the mix that don't equate to the value of the equipment that we're installing, we would call the soft cost. And we encourage folks to do as much within one project as possible, not sort of parse out projects and put 10 panels this year and 10 panels next year. The main reason for that is that we have to repeat all those soft costs, which then makes that energy far more expensive as you double those costs.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny.
Another one from Don. What is the ideal angle of orientation? The sun changes position, so can the panels be adjusted?
Oh, I don't know the exact angle. Henry, can you take this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is something Kenny can correct me if I'm wrong, but so the ideal angle is basically your latitude. But when you're putting it on a roof, you really it makes the most sense just to have them be flush with the roof, whatever pitch your roof is at, rather than trying to, angle it up a few degrees to get a little more sunlight. And that's mostly because that adds some cost. It doesn't look nice when you have panels that aren't flush with the roof. Some places it's not even allowed. And it also adds to the wind load of your panels. So they act more like a sail that can catch the wind and potentially lead to damage when the wind is strong. And then in terms of panels can be adjusted, so they can. There's such thing as panels that either automatically or you manually, they track the sun throughout the day, or maybe they even pitch up and down and track the sun throughout the year. Those are pretty rare for residential installations. You'll most often see them in large scale, grid scale installations where there's a really where there's a lot of sky, like where the horizon line is low, and it really it pays to catch the sun directly from horizon to horizon. But it adds maintenance costs, it adds moving parts, it adds things that can break, whereas a non-moving solar installation doesn't have any moving parts. It's much more durable and low maintenance. So it's generally not worth it for a small scale residential array to have it move. It's just cheaper to get the panels fixed facing wind direction.
Thanks, Henry.
Another question from Paul. Is there a sales tax?
Yes, there is a sales tax applied to solar installations.
But all of that's calculated and rolled into your contract cost. So the cost that you see on your contract is the cost that you pay.
Thanks, Ken.
Sometimes governments will create solar sales tax exemptions as a way to incentivize solar. I don't think there are any of those in the area, but I could be wrong. Another question from Raymond. I've been disappointed. So remember, Raymond already has solar. I've been disappointed with labor costs to replace faulty microinverters, about $1,000. Is there a way to avoid these with a new installation?
Kenny, you can add on to this. At that point, you may not want to keep the microinverters. You may want to go to a string inverter and DC optimizer setup. That's going to kind of depend on how many have already failed or how many are in the process of failing.
Yeah, I would add to that my recommended model for the majority of installations that I work on is actually the string inverter with optimizers, because you're saving that inversion function for the ground level, making those potential visits to service the issues far less impacting on your life. And also SolarEdge has a warranty on the inverter that we extend to 25 years. So the cost to perform said work would be zero in the case of the warranties that we're offering. And I'm sorry to hear that you've had issues with your microinverters. That is common. All forms of inverters, micro and central, are going to be one of the earliest points of failure in the system. And that's something to consider when you make your decision. There's a lot of information out on both of them. So in neither case can you really avoid the potential need for service. But what you can do is work with a manufacturer who has a good track record of honoring their warranties quickly and efficiently, because every moment that you're not producing solar, you're potentially losing value. And we work with SolarEdge dominantly because of our experience with their warranty process, which is fairly swift and efficient.
Thanks, Kenny. We'll do one more question and then we'll move on. Don is asking, what is the largest component of the soft cost? Would it be transportation? And maybe Kenny, if you have an answer, you can weigh in. But I was actually just looking at this because I was curious too, and what the Department of Energy did a study on this, and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the largest share, about a fifth of the soft costs, is just overhead. So the company's profit, kind of general administrative costs. And then right after that is sales and marketing, just what it costs to turn a lead into a signed contract. And that is, as Monica said, that's really where the solar co-op comes in to help lower those customer acquisition costs.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to address that. And, any additional soft costs, I saw specifically you were asking about transportation there in the chat. That would really be specific to the project and the necessary transportation to the site. So that would certainly vary from project to project. And it would just be one item in the column of a long list, a checklist that it takes to do a project that we do have to outlay funds for.
Thanks, Kenny. There's one more question. I'll answer in the chat so we can just.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So this is the final section of the talk tonight, and this is getting into the details of how solar co-ops work. So some of the benefits of joining a solar co-op, we know because we have over 300 in the country. It is a well-oiled machine, and we see really consistent results across our co-ops. And the process aggregates a lot of consumers together to go through one competitively selected installer. So you can save money, although, like I said before, we can't guarantee it, but we do see that you do because of economies of scale and the soft costs that we had been talking about before. And a lot of this comes through the support that we give you throughout the process. We give you this technical guidance. We're also somebody in your corner, so we can help you parse the sales pitch, the contract, make sure that you understand the details of the warranties, so that you can make an informed decision and feel really confident about it. Even if you don't go solar now, you'll walk away knowing a lot more about the process and how to go solar in the future. It's also an opportunity for you to connect with solar enthusiasts in your community. And have a broader impact in solar policy. And at the end, you're still going to remain a Solar United Neighbors member, and we'll keep you up to date with policy changes and help you fight for the right for more people to go solar, as well as to protect your right as a solar homeowner. So the process is pretty variable, but in general, it takes usually 6 to 8 months. So we launched this co-op in early September, and it will wrap up next Monday, January 31st. And right now you're all at step 1. You are learning and attending the info session. And then at step 2, if you're ready to join, it's free to become a co-op member. There is no obligation to go solar. You're not signing a contract, you're essentially signing up for emails and to get a customized proposal from the installer. And then we'll continue to work with local partners to grow the co-op. And it's really important in that step 3 and kind of throughout the process of the co-op to spread the word. That's why we asked at the beginning if you would share this webinar with friends and neighbors. And it's really important to grow the co-op so that you can bring in more members from your community and help more in Center County go solar. So around the 20 to 30 member threshold, Sun will start the process of soliciting bids from installers that service the area. So we issue a competitive request for proposals, and then we will review their bids and check references. It's a little vetting that we do. We'll make sure that they're properly licensed and insured to work in Pennsylvania. And we'll also call their customer references. We, however, do not make the installer selection. We think it's really important that the people who are going to go solar with the co-op members are the ones who select the installer. So at this point, there will be a selection committee that gets together of co-op members. They were early members and they got together for almost 2 hours and really walked through every step of all of the bids. And they looked at how the installer, which installer was going to best suit the needs of each of the members. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. But once the installer was selected, they were able to develop customized proposals for all the members of the co-op. And now we're at the sign up deadline. Like I said, it's going to be on Monday, and this is the last chance to join the co-op. So after this, the co-op will be closed to new members. And then through this time and probably for another week or so afterwards, co-op members will continue to get customized proposals, and they'll get that at the co-op pricing. And up to this point, you can walk away at any time. There's no penalty. And it's here that you can walk away or you can sign your contract to go solar. And then it'll take a couple of months for permitting process and the panel acquisition, and then the installation itself really only takes a day or two, kind of depending on size and complexity. And then it'll be another couple of weeks to interconnect, and then you'll have permission to operate, and your solar panels will be working and providing energy for your home. And then after that, we'll get together. In the era of COVID, it's mostly been virtual, but we'll see where we're at. And we'll have a celebration. We'll talk about the impact of the co-op in Center County, and we'll talk about all of the carbon dioxide that we've offset and how much money has been saved on energy costs by co-op members. Share kind of details like that. And you can share pictures of your installation with each other. And we'll talk about what's next for the solar movement in Pennsylvania. So I wanted to touch for a second on the selection committee and that criteria. So like I said, the installer is selected by co-op members, and the selection committee was made up of co-op members who joined early. And up to that point, everyone who joined selected their criteria for an installation, their preferences. And so I think we had about 40 co-op members at that point. And so the criteria to select from was price, equipment quality, warranties, experience, and how close they were to Center County. So these preferences were shared with the selection committee so that they had them in mind during the selection. And we actually kept coming back to those criteria throughout the process. So it's very holistic. And at the end of the committee meeting, the co-op members selected sustainable energy systems, and the reasons that were given by the selection committee was SES had extensive experience, comprehensive warranties. They had really great customer ratings and company practices. So if you join the co-op, you will get a free roof review from us at Sun, and then you'll get your customized proposal from SES. And you'll probably be hearing from Kenny, and I included his contact information here. But Kenny, if you want to go ahead and say a little bit more, floor is yours.
Sure thing. Thanks so much, Monica and Henry. I wish we could all be together in person so that we could all get to know each other a little bit better. That's always a fun part of the co-op. I want you guys to know Monica and Henry are working really hard for you here, and they have a really tough job. They have to try to speak to all of your specific questions and needs as you attempt your solar project, which is almost impossible because everything about your project is specific to your home, specific to your goals, your budget. And that's where I come in. So I'll first tell you a little bit about what I do personally, and then I'll tell you about my company. And then I see that there's some additional questions that are here in the chat, and we'll try to touch on those too if there's still time. So what Monica and Henry and the co-op have done for you is a huge service in terms of just providing the general information about solar. And as you guys have seen tonight, there's a lot of different concepts that maybe you wouldn't necessarily be familiar with, depending on, you know, your lifestyle or the different work that you've been involved in. So maybe there's even terminology that you've needed to touch on, and all of that, you know, that's a big service to you to have an impartial party, someone who's not trying to sell you the system, to educate you on those factors. And that's something that I am personally a big fan of when it comes to the co-op model, because I'm in development and sales. And so I totally understand. I've bought in cars and homes and other items in my life, and I understand the potential distrust that can be there for a salesperson, especially when it's a sort of mysterious new technology. So to have a impartial third party speak to maybe some of the things that you don't understand and make you feel a little more confident in your general knowledge, that's a really important part of this. But where I come in is I generally answer questions with more questions, because it really takes a lot of specific information to tell you, here's what your home can do with solar. So the way that I approach my work is fairly simple. You know, we receive your information from the co-op, and that includes all the notes, the address, and if you provide it, hopefully up front, the electric bill. And the way that we pull that information together into a proposal for you is really detailed and specific. So the key point of providing your electric bill is that we can see how much your annual usage totals up to. And then we take that and we use it as a target for what your system can potentially produce. Now, there's no guarantee that you have productive space or space at all to produce 100% of your needs. And I want to encourage all of you to see that 100% doesn't necessarily mean much in this regard, because it's helpful in a number of ways, both economically and environmentally, to offset any of your energy usage with solar. So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to see what would 100% look like, and we're going to need your electric bill and the info on that bill to tell us what we're targeting. And then I'm going to use my tools, and I'm going to build a 3D model of your home, and I'm going to build out all the obstructions on your roof. So the vent pipes that I can see, the chimney, and I'm going to use a LiDAR signal. And the LiDAR signal is going to show me the scale, the height, and the shape of the roof and the surrounding trees and buildings. So we're going to use all of that information to build a really detailed 3D model of your property. And that's going to be to scale. And then we're going to use high-powered software to place the exact components that we're proposing to you on your home. And we're going to run a simulation that includes the complex patterns of the sun every hour of the day, every day of the year. And all of that's going to spit out a really nice specific production estimate for you, right? So I'll be able to say, here's what fits on your roof, here's what that costs, and here's what it should produce in year one, give or take, right? It's an estimate, but we use all these really high-powered tools to try to give you a lot of confidence and a lot of specificity in that estimate. So my job is not to speak to your general questions. My job is to dig in, get the information I need, use the tools I have, and really tell you exactly what is going to happen with your project. That also includes battery storage and EV chargers. We also have to do electric work and roofing work to complete our jobs, all of which I'm well versed in and can help with. When you work with the co-op, it's 50% likely that you would work directly with me. I have one other partner on the sales staff that works with the co-ops. His name is Stuart Smith. He couldn't be here with us tonight, but he has even more experience than I do. I've been at this for over 5 years. Stuart started as an installer back in 2010. So he's actually been on roofs installing solar longer than most people have been in this industry in general. So both of us have a lot of experience and background knowledge taking homeowners entirely through the process. And that starts with just sending us your email address and your physical address and allowing us to show you a proposal. As these guys have already described, the process doesn't lock you in to your proposal. You're really in the driver's seat. We do our best to target some specific things for you, and we show you what we think is, your best option when we provide your proposal. But you are in the driver's seat, and if you say this costs too much, or this design doesn't look right, or I only want to target 50% of my usage. All of that is completely under your control. And it's my job to speak to your specific questions and to help you target your specific goals, but also to tell you, the hard truth. And for some folks who want to go solar, that means there's too much shade exactly where their roof would be productive, and it's not really advisable for them. So I might also play that role in your project, unfortunately. All of that wraps up my role in your project, and my company, Sustainable Energy Systems, I'll speak a little bit to. So we are one of the oldest installers in the Mid-Atlantic region. We were founded in 2008 and have been putting on solar on roofs since that time, which is longer than just about any of our competitors. We've worked as a subcontracting installer for a lot of the sales companies that you may already be familiar with. So, a lot of companies out there sell solar, they don't install solar. We're the opposite. We're mainly an installation business, and we do have a small sales staff. But we've done megawatts upon megawatts of installations. I personally have been responsible for, I'm getting close to 2 megawatts personally over the course of 5 years. So we've been able to work with hundreds and hundreds of homeowners just in my time and help them achieve their solar goals. We're based in Frederick, Maryland. Our main home office is in Frederick, Maryland. And we were started as a family business in Frederick, Maryland, which is in Western Maryland, just, a little bit south of you guys. But we have, in the time since 2008, expanded our operation all throughout the Mid-Atlantic region to include Pennsylvania. We've done multiple hundreds of installations in Pennsylvania in the last few years. We have a dedicated office, installation staff, and service staff out of Harrisburg, PA. So you have our home office close to you, but you have the Pennsylvania office up there as well that'll be working to complete your projects and to offer service to you. So I will gladly answer any specific questions you guys have, but I'll also let you know that a lot of the questions I see forming in the chat, we're going to handle for you as your sales representative, and we're going to spend as many hours on the phone or in email that you need to feel satisfied that your particular questions are answered and that we're addressing your project as you see is needed. So I do want to encourage you, if you have some really detailed, tough questions, you can feel confident that either Stuart or I will answer those for you in the sales process. But I do, if I have time, and Monica, you can stop me if I'm going on too long. I will take some of the questions that are in the chat here, if that's okay.
Yeah, let me just finish up. I only have 1 or 2 more slides, and then we'll wrap up with some questions. Does that sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you're ready, we really hope that you consider joining the Center County Solar and EV Charger Co-op, and you can do that at solarunitedneighbors.org/Center County. It would also really help us and the co-op generally if you tell your friends and neighbors about the co-op. The join deadline is this coming Monday, January 31st. And I just want to thank everybody, Henry, Kenny, everybody for being here. I know it's a lot to give up your Wednesday night, but if you have any questions, please reach out to us. The PA team at solarunitedneighbors.org email address is the best way to get us. And when you sign up, look for an email or a call from Kenny. So at this point, yes, let's finish up with some questions. And thank you again, everyone.
All right, so we have a question from Benjamin about cost overruns, or any cost overruns billed throughout or passed through. Maybe Kenny, you could talk about what are situations that might lead to, I guess, like a change order, or like change in the project after contract signing, and like what are things the customer could do to avoid those?
It's a pretty short list. So we do our best to present you with a contract and a proposal that we're very confident is going to work, and it behooves us to do that. So it's a short list of things that can change, and we're going to find out very, very early on in the project to present you with those changes that, again, you're not necessarily locked into. If the project should become so unattractive to you, we could address that. So real quickly, you sign a contract, you make your first deposit, and we schedule a site evaluation for you. And that's when we come and we get on your roof. We measure all the dimensions of your roof, the locations of the vent pipes, etc. We also help you plan the run from your roof to your electrical components, and we evaluate the quality of your electrical components. So we pull all that together from your site evaluation. And then we know at that exact moment, just a few short weeks after you've signed your contract, exactly what is needed to push the project forward. So it's just a handful of things. Potentially, we saw that there was a difference in the space remotely than there was in person, right? So the satellite image and the scaling software that we use, if it's off a little bit, potentially we need to lose a panel or two. We try to be conservative in our design, so that's unlikely for you, but it certainly does happen. It shouldn't happen at any great scale. Beyond losing a panel, you might also be offered to add a panel if we see there's additional space in a productive spot on your roof that we didn't see in that initial remote evaluation. So some positives can come at that part too. Beyond that, you know, with a simple project where we're not doing a ground mount or anything extra work like that, it's really just going to be your main service panel or your service entrance cable, right? So your main service panel, most folks call that your circuit breaker. You know, that's just where all the circuits in your home and the bus bar exists, right? And if that is old and rusted, we have to switch that out for you so that you can pass inspection at the end of your project. And we have to, you know, work under conditions that we're sure are going to pass inspection. So that's one thing where we would say, oh, we weren't aware that your main service panel was rusted. We need to add this flat adder, which I believe for your co-op is $1,200, and replace that for you. Attached to your main service panel is your service entrance cable. So that's the cable that allows energy to come in off the grid and enter your home. And there's a small portion of that as it enters the home often has to twist and turn and adhere to the home, and it is either damaged or degraded over time. And that's another spot where if we see, okay, now that we're on site and your service entrance cable is in a rough condition, we have to replace that. That again is a flat adder of, I believe, $1,200. So let's say you had to do both of those things, your main service panel and your service entrance cable, that's called a heavy up. That's going to have a flat cost too. And we're going to bring all of this to your attention before we start doing any of the additional work for the project, any of the permitting, interconnection. So if for some reason that was a showstopper for you, we would address it then before a lot of the project was completed. And that's really it there. You know, unless you had a more complex project like a ground mount with a long trench, there are elements of just drawing a path for that trench that would be difficult to assess remotely. So that's one area where costs might increase after the contract, but there's not a lot of reasons for that or examples. And, you know, we're certainly not going to switch out your equipment and then suddenly say you owe us more for more expensive equipment or any of those dirty tricks from the construction business.
Thanks, Kenny. We have one that maybe Monica, you want to take. Paul is asking, do you know if the federal tax credit is phased out as personal income rises?
Sorry. So no, it is not. It is just the flat federal income tax. However, if you don't have enough income to take advantage of the credit, then you will not be able to use it, or you may need to roll it over from year to year. And again, we would recommend that you talk to a tax professional just to make sure, but it does not change as you move up income brackets.
Yeah, so it's almost the opposite, as Monica said, which if that sounds silly to you, tell your representative in Congress, because they can do something about that. So I think we covered all of the questions I see in the chat. If there are any more questions you have there, this is the last call. Raise your hand or stick them in the chat.
While we wait for that last call, I'll just speak to Don directly here. You know, you were asking about the specific degradation. On the majority of the panels that we're installing for you guys, the yearly degradation would be 0.25, and the 25-year total degradation, you should have 92% left of what you had in year one. So 0.25 per year, and a loss no greater than 8% over 25 years.
Right, and that's guaranteed in the performance, the production warranty of the panel. So there's redress if it does happen to exceed that rate of degradation.
And that specific rate of degradation is about as good as it gets in the residential solar panel market. That in terms of a warranty offer, that's about as good as you're going to see.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions in there.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. It was a very lively chat. I'm sorry I missed it, but thank you for bringing all of your questions. Oh, Is there any?
Paul's asking, is there another option other than grid connected? And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yes, you can go off grid. You would need some other form of generator or extensive battery backup in order to be off grid entirely. That way you have power when the sun's not shining. Yeah, hope that answers that. If you guys wanted to add anything to it.
I would highly discourage you from doing that. Just because of the additional cost of going off grid. While I personally relate to the impulse, a number of impulses that you'd have to be off grid and to, have that idea fulfilled, the grid is paid for. It's not costing you anything, and it serves as a backup to both power outages and a source of technical storage, not actual storage, but it stores your energy in the form of net metering. So to disconnect from the grid when you live in a location where you're already connected to the grid, to me, is being principled to a fault. Now we can have a private discussion about that, but that's my take on it.
Thanks, Kenny. All right, so I think we'll probably end it there, but thank you everybody for coming tonight, and I hope you have a great night.